England's men are trying to win a test series in India, arguably one of the toughest assignments in world cricket. Unique conditions, formidable opponents. Batting in India is like no other place on earth. So who better to ask about how you go about such a tough assignment than Sir Alistair Cook, a man who's played 13 tests there, scored 500s in India, averages over 50. Most people seem to struggle with India. Alistair, you relish it.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm not sure I relish it, but I think fundamentally when they take a nice slow wicket, they take out one of my main ways of getting out, which is nicked off. It's probably why I scored runs.
It's also the first place you played.
It is actually, yeah.
Let's start with that, because your introduction into Test cricket is an extraordinary one. You were in the Caribbean and you've flown, which to the Caribbean is the other side of the world, to India at very short notice, go straight into a Test match. How much did you know what to expect about India when you got there?
Well, yeah, I mean, flying, there's not many direct flights from Antigua to Nagpur, I can assure you. So it was a Antigua to Gatwick, crossover, and Heathrow to Mumbai to Nagpur. It's a 36 hours flight with a grumpy Lancastrian. It was... Do you know what, right? This is playing in that game. Obviously, for me, a great way to make your debut in terms of expectation zero. You can't go to India, never batted there before, in a game, and score runs against that bowling attack of Kumble and Harbhajan. But actually, all the stuff which happens behind the scenes. My A tour was to Sri Lanka in 2004. Before that, Gucci had sent me out to the Mumbai spin camp for 10 days with me, a couple of young Essex lads, where you just played face spin, Bangladesh, under 19 tour and World Cup. So actually, I had actually played quite a lot in the subcontinent before then. And it's a really good place to bat. All the stuff, the build-up of it. I think it's because we were told we can't play spin like the Indians can play spin or the subcontinent teams play spin, because they play very differently to what kind of, I suppose, we do, because most of the time spin is an afterthought for our teams. It's all about seam, and quite right, you're having a Tiflex ball in April, you ain't gonna bowl much spin, I can tell you that. But fundamentally, actually, if you've got some really good basics against spin, it's a lovely place to bat. And when I mean basics, it's that the game has changed. Like this England side play a very different way to how I approached playing spin. And actually, looking now, if I could do some of the stuff they do, it would have helped me a lot. The reverse sweep. If I could have played the reverse sweep with that control and played at the right time, it changes how you play, without a doubt. It changes. A horrible thing as a captain when a person reverse sweeps, because you can't cover both sides of the wicket. But fundamentally, my game was based on defence.
Your height, does that make a difference? I mean, when we think of great players of spin in India, often the people like Sunil Gavaskar, Gundappa Vishwanath, Sachin Tendulkar, they're not really tall people, but your method, did that involve you making your height an advantage? So
I actually wasn't describing myself a great player of spin. I was a very efficient player of spin. And I think there's a difference. I never dominated spin. I think to be a great player of spin, I think you've got to have the ability to dominate. I just soaked up a lot of pressure and batted a long period of time. I actually had a very good record against spin, but I didn't dominate spin. My game was based, as I say, the height was irrelevant in one sense, in my opinion. I was very comfortable. Once I'd worked it out, defending against spin. And if you can defend against spin, it means you can attack on your terms, and it means that the four men round the bat in general, I wasn't that bothered about. And defence against spin is being able to pick length very quickly, because you don't want to get caught in no man's land. You're either defending back or you're defending forward. If you're caught half and half, that is when the majority of those bat pads are brought in. Actually, I think I'll go back to Medabad, where in a 2012 series, that first game we got bottled with 90 off for 7, I think, and quite a lot of our dismissals were attacking shots because players weren't comfortable against the spin. And there was a stat that we were defending balls in the danger zone. When I mean danger zone, there's this, obviously one of the stat things that Nathan Lehman, the danger zone was neither forward nor back. Something like we were defending those balls 35% of the time. So we were getting it wrong. They were doing us in length 35% of the time. So that was that 2 times and over maybe? And that's high risk. It's not like they were doing us. So a Dravid would be getting that down to like 6%. Defending. It doesn't mean you get out, but it means that's you're bringing the bowls in. And so that was our aim, is either defending right out there in front, getting really full, or defending really far back. And actually, we had net sessions, over a period of time, because actually I think we toured Bangladesh in 2010, we toured Sri Lanka before that, obviously 2012 India, and I'm sure Abu Dhabi in between that. So this over a long period of time, these stats, as well as a Medabag stat, where it was all about that. So we had net sessions where you weren't allowed to come forward to defend. You weren't allowed to go back to defend. And I know it wasn't from very long, but it was showed what you could do, as your game. Now, this is so different to how a Ben Stokes side will go, well, defence is kind of irrelevant. But actually, they will have to defend certain balls. But that's how we learn how to play. And the improvement in all our games, through Andrew Flower's method and through like a gradual increase of playing, was actually superb. So if you can feel comfortable, I say, defending against spin, because you go into a net and you say, how are you going to play against spin? How are you going to play against his left arm? I'm going to be really positive. And then the second ball of a net, you run down, you whack him over the top. Brilliant. Inconsequential, great shot. We could all do it, but most players can do it. The problem is you ain't running down the second ball in the game if you are 3 minutes before lunch, or 20 minutes before the end of play. You just gone in. So Test cricket forces you at certain times to play. So and I'm pretty sure this England team about to this tour, there'll be times where they will have to defend as well as just attack. So these fundamentals will hold them in good stead. But I'm sure I'll get proven totally wrong, and someone will go and bat 170 of 64 balls and not play one defensive shot.
Now, what strikes me about India, having been there and commentated from there, is that it is a place of extraordinary variety. I've seen where pitches and grounds can change at the behest of the Indian authorities overnight. So instead of having the flat pitch, you might get the spinning pitch. You might have to deal with reverse swing. Is that one of the toughest aspects of an Indian tour, that there is so much variety that you have to be so adaptable?
I think the toughest part of the Indian tour is the all-encompassing nature of India, I think, is what makes it so hard. Yes, you're challenged as a batsman and as a bowler and as a side in so many different ways, which you're right with in terms of what you said. Whether the pitch changes or whatever, the pitch changes throughout the game most of the time. And you are tested in certain ways, and there's certain times where batting in the subcontinent is just the best place to bat. I just said nicking off is pretty much out of the game sometimes because it's so slow, and sometimes it doesn't turn a huge amount. Actually, in my Nagpur debut, it didn't turn a huge amount. See, there you go in a preconceived idea of it ragging. Well, actually, it didn't rag, and it was a nice place to bat. Yes, it's a different way of batting because it can be quite turgid, can be quite slow, but if you can get into that rhythm of batting there, it's a lovely place to bat. And that's probably why my record is okay, because actually getting the first 30 balls, everything seems to happen so fast, so quickly, that you're so indecisive. Because actually most middle order players and most openers, if you're playing spin, normally you're on 30 or 40 when you go in, certainly English players, because you normally got barrage of seam and the last resort is bowl spin. But actually in the subcontinent, the first resort spin, so you can often get in after losing 2 wickets. You're there first ball against spin, and everything seems to happen so fast. But actually playing spin, you need to be so quick on your feet, so decisive, even though the ball's slow. It's almost the opposite to what you expect.
It seems to me, though, that they are challenges that English county cricket doesn't necessarily prepare you for. I think back to the 2016 tour and Ben Duckett, who has now made a great comeback into the England side, but was faced with opening the batting against off-spin, coming round the wicket to him with the new ball, which he'd never have faced before. Is part of the problem with India that you build up that terror of the otherness, the newness?
Well, it's just, the one of the big things about playing cricket in subcontinent or playing at the highest level is kind of the difference of that. You're saying that Ben Duckett was picked on that tour, and I was part of that selection meeting as captain. He plays spin well, he plays it differently, and he plays aggressively, and he will take them on. And that's how he played spin, but he didn't have a defensive game to get him in to be able to do that. And it was just a real, probably an eye-opener for him, where if you'd have said in 2016, I'm a really good player of spin, as we all thought he was, it's only when you actually get tested to see how good actually are you. And to his absolute credit, he's gone away, and he has now worked out his method of playing spin. Yes, there is a lot more attacking shots, and he's gone probably back to how you're suited, but his defence is better against it. He defends less, but he's worked out that you cannot just, you can't just sweep every ball. He's worked out a way, if it is turning, that he can stay a little bit more on the stumps. If it's not turning, he stays leg side of it to keep his pad out of the way. And until you experience it, until you experience the lows, and you think, I'll be fine, you don't know what the challenge is that you have to overcome. And I think that's what Indian or subcontinent cricket does. It throws you up challenges which you're not actually expecting before.
Does it also, though, really make the very greatest players seem even greater? The reason I say that is because you have played in India 2006, 2008, 2012, 2016 under KP's captaincy, under Andrew Flintoff's captaincy, your own captaincy. And you've played some great players there. I think of KP and I think of Jimmy Anderson. Did you see them sort of grow on the job and get better through playing there? I think of Anderson particularly towards the latter period that you were playing with him, sort of mastering conditions that might not have been naturally suited to him.
Absolutely. I think that is what Test cricket does, or cricket actually does, compared to almost any other sport, is home advantage, away advantage. The conditions you play as a cricketer are so different from different parts of the world. And actually, Jimmy's ability to survive in the subcontinent conditions come from where he, bowling on a northern wicket up north in club cricket, where you just got to not hit an area, but basically hit an area. I don't mean that derogatorily. There's a great skill in that, but allowing the pitch to do it and the swing to do it, to be able to then master reverse swing or be able to hold your own when it's not in your favour is what has made Jimmy the bowler he is. Like, how many times did we hear, well, he's only good in England when he swings at the start of his career? And actually, fundamentally, that was right. But for the last 10 years, since probably 2010-11, which is now 13 years ago or 14 years ago, you couldn't say that. And he's mastered how to survive in different conditions. And go back to Kolkata, it was we needed people to be able to reverse swing the ball well.
This is back in 2012.
It was, we played in Mumbai when it ragged. A week later, it wasn't ragging, but it was going to reverse. And his ability to survive in Mumbai and do a job, not support Monty and Swanee, but when it was his time to strike, he was good enough to do it. And that's just mastering the skills, and that's what makes cricket such a great game. The opportunity you have to master different skills and need it at different times and know when to do it. And that's like like batting. The difference of batting at a cloudy morning at Lord's with the floodlights on, the technique to survive, to walking out on an absolute ragger in Mumbai and scoring runs, is so different. And that's what gets the players going. That's what used to excite me. Can you cope with that? And that's why you're more likely to be able to cope with Lord's, because that's what you've grown up with. But if you can cope with the other conditions, you are a more rounded player.
Now, how do you work out what a pitch is going to do in India more than anywhere else? Because obviously you've got you know what to expect in English conditions. You've seen it loads and loads of times. In India, the pitch can do anything, and that can make a massive difference to your team selection, whether you're going with 3 seamers, 2 seamers, 1, who knows, even none one day. How do you get that knowledge? What do? Do you have to chat with the ground staff? Do you chat with Sunil Gavaskar? Is he going to help you? What do you do? Local knowledge is absolutely... And you can trust it?
Well, that's what you do need to have local knowledge in your side. I think it's like, hence, there's no doubt about, Mushi was around for the England team, Mushtaq Ahmed. His input in those kind of stuff was invaluable, because, looking at the wicket, we'll think we'll do this and that. I'm trying to think of an example. Well, let's Mumbai 2012. we all knew it was going to turn and bounce, and it did. Nagpur, we thought the result wicket, looked at it, go, cool, this is going to turn. Didn't turn, didn't do anything. So, not that it affected selection, but they do play differently. And I certainly now, India have recently obviously played on some absolute, some real tough wickets. But I think local knowledge in terms of trying to get on the front foot how you're going to play, certainly as a batter. Like the difference in the grounds in India are so different. The red soil, the bounce in Mumbai to say Kolkata where it skids on a bit more, and actually not getting caught out by it. You don't want to find this out on day 2 and then the game's, you're too late for the game. So actually the different challenges and conditions and trying to get that into your game plan before is crucial.
Pep Guardiola.
A perfectionist.
A tactical genius.
The best manager of his generation.
The best manager in history.
Reserve team coach Pep Guardiola, a popular former player at the new club, will take over from Rijkaard.
This is a podcast all about the man who has shaped the modern game.
It feels almost as if he's solved the riddle, if he's cracked the code for football.
From his history in La Masia to dominating football across Europe.
He's brought a brand of football to the Premier League that we've never seen before.
Everybody plays like Pep's teams now.
On football, he takes you to heaven.
From BBC 5 Live.
Sporting Giants, Pep Guardiola.
Listen on BBC Sounds.
Now, often we compare India with Australia in terms of tours, in terms of toughness. And I've experienced the oddness of an Australian tour where the entirety of Australia, I mean the journalists, I mean the people who stamp your ticket when you come off the plane, everybody is trying to make your life as uncomfortable as possible. And I'm just a commentator. If you're a player, that's the experience of Australia, isn't it? That antagonism. Is that similar in India, or is it a different kind of intensity that you get there?
There's certainly not that antagonism in India. Is like love. I mean, their love of cricket. You just until you've experienced it and you've been out there. If you love cricket, you've got to go on an Indian tour at some stage, just because you can't actually kind of describe their passion for it or their enthusiasm or their genuine love for the game, and that's almost every single person. So the Indian tour is very different to the Australian tour. You're not going to get shouted at with abuse walking down the street like you might do in Australia. That has happened, and we all know that happened in a nice way. But that kind of stuff, that kind of upfront, you're just going to get swamped in India. You get swamped by every single person wanting a piece of you. I mean, that's probably a huge credit to those Indian players who have to cope with that 24/7, 365 days a year when a year, and having to cope under that pressure. It is an all-encompassing tour as a player, and if you get behind, it's very tough because there is zero escape. Even if you say, I'm going to go and play golf, there'll be that 4 hours. Everybody will know who you are. You're on that course before you know it. And I think there's an example. We were in Dharamshala once, and Trevor Penny was the fielding coach for India. And this is in the one-day tour. Dharamshala, beautiful, beautiful at the bottom of the Himalayas. He said, what you must do is go to this restaurant, have pizza and have a Corona and watch the sunset over the Himalayas. And do you know what? I thought that was a lovely holiday. So me, Belly, I think it was Chris Wokes from Ravi. So no, not big guns or anything like that going there. We went there, drove the half an hour, and when we got there, they just knew we were coming. I don't quite know. And when I say there was 600 people outside the restaurant, there was 600 people outside the restaurant, there was that many, that we ended up eating in a bedroom, locked, no view of any Himalayas, more view of some dusty Y-fronts, eating our pizza and having a Corona. And then by the time we left the restaurant, it was absolute. They'd shut the restaurant downstairs. There was no one else in it apart from fans, not eating, just trying to get a glimpse. And there was 2,000 people outside to get the cab. And you think I'm making it up. I promise you I'm not making it up. I've got a video somewhere on some kind of iCloud somewhere, but it was the most extraordinary thing. It was fun. It wasn't dangerous or anything. It was just shows how much love they have for the game. And And it's a very special place to play cricket. Very special place.
England have a curiously not a bad record actually in the modern era in India. If you think how few teams have managed to win matches. You've been involved in a drawn series, a narrowly lost series in 2008, which was a series of only 2 games. You've won a series. 2016 we'll gloss over. But England won in Chennai the last time they were there. So England have had some success out there. What is it that England tend to do differently from basically all comers? Because no one else, Australia's won a couple of games in the last 10 years, but no one else has beaten India since you won in 2012.
I don't know why. Maybe we're not as bad at playing a spin as people write about us. Maybe our spinners aren't as bad as everyone says when you compare them. So I couldn't tell you why we do. Do we play slightly more on the subcontinent compared to others, other like sides compared to New Zealand, Australia, or South Africa? I don't know, but
also, I mean, is there a way in which the fact that the crowd loves its cricket so much, but can also be silenced? You can't silence an Australian crowd, except Melbourne.
Well, we clear them out of stadiums.
You did in 2010. But you watch an Indian crowd, and if an Indian loses a wicket, you don't hear a thing. If an Englishman scores a 4, you tend not to hear a thing. Can that actually give you confidence when you're out there thinking, we can get in control here. We can take control.
I don't think that's ever crossed my mind. I mean, I've played in some games in India where I think it was in Ranchi. Is that Dhoni's home ground? They hadn't had a one day ever, and we played there when he was captain. And you could not hear I was at first slip, Treaders at second slip. You could not hear each other speak. It was that loud. It was incredible, and it wasn't atmosphere; it was just noise.
So there is that noise.
It is. Massive headache when you play. I mean, I haven't been to an IPL game. I'd like to experience that just to see like the game that it must be like that, but on steroids, kind of the noise. The one thing I think you can do in India, and I have said this a couple of times, that if you can put them under pressure, because they're so unused to it in their conditions and what they have to go through as players constantly in their home conditions in terms of the fans and the enthusiasm and all that stuff, that how they do. I don't know if that is a factor, but if you can put them under pressure, they don't often respond that well to, just because they're often in front of the game so much. They are so well suited to play in these conditions. They've got a really rounded side. Every side I've kind of played against, they've got every option covered. There's sides where we think, we play 3 seamers and 2 spinners, and there's other times where we play like 2 seamers and 2 spinners, and we always feel slightly unbalanced. Even when we won, India always seemed to have 2 out and out quick bowlers and 3 spinning options. So they do seem to have everything always covered. Now, whether the spinning options are whoever they pick, they do seem to cover their bases better than any other side, and which seems strange, because actually, why should they seem to be able to do it better than everyone else? But they do that.
And is that sort of a fundamental built-in disadvantage for sides that tour India? Because you think of South Africa, you think of Australia, you think of England, New Zealand. These are teams that aren't going to play 2 spinners. When you go to India, it's a prerequisite to play at least 2.
Well, I did win one of my games.
Yeah, well, you did know, and you lost. But that means, perforce, that there's going to be an inexperienced bowler bowling in a cauldron situation against players who play spin really well. Is that sort of like at the very core of the built-in disadvantage that you have?
Dude, I'd never thought about it like that. And actually, it's a really good point, because actually, maybe that's why, if you can play well in India and as a test player, the confidence that gives you, if you play well there, you tend to play pretty well in other conditions because of that. So, like, if say you're an inexperienced spinner and it's a turning wicket, you've got to deliver. There's no hiding place, even if there's 2 of you. And Swanee's great point. If it's a spinning wicket, certainly in England, there's only ever one spinner has to bowl them out. He has to take the wicket. On a green seamer, there's often 3 or 4 seamers bowling, and actually, so between them, they should be able to muddle themselves to get 10 wickets. So the pressure of a spinner to do that. So whether it's the first innings where they're expected just not miss length and just bowl tidily and not go for any runs, say on a traditional Indian wicket where it's not turning, to the second innings where they're just expected to bowl them out. And as you said, you've got one, other spinner who hasn't probably played that much. So you go back to 2012. Actually, we didn't, because we had Monty and Swanee, and hence we won. So actually, coming up in this series now, there's huge pressure. So if you can come through that and deliver, geez, if you under that kind of, you think, well, I can play this game, and that just must flow into other your confidence for other games.
And that must almost make another pressure for a captain, especially an English captain, because you don't have a lot of not experience, but you don't have a lot of requirement to captain spinners in England a lot of the time. So does that mean you've got to adapt your captaincy style often to guys who are inexperienced in Test cricket in circumstances that neither of you are used to?
Yeah, I mean, how often does a spinner open the ball in England? Well, once. I remember it once, I think. If you took Light out of it, I think Swanee... Was it Devon Smith? He opened the bowling.
He kept on getting him out.
He kept getting him out.
Got him at Lords, I think. Yeah.
And then he opened the bowling. Strauss is trying to be inventive, and he bowled him. And, I don't think he did get him out. But all he did is made Jimmy Anderson very grumpy, because he was like, well, hang on a minute. I'm in England with a Duke's ball, and we're bowling spin. And actually, Jimmy had a point. A pretty good point, because... but yeah, you are, as a captain, how often are you throwing a ball to spinner in the 4th over, or even opening the bowling spin? And maybe if you go back to Medabad, probably that's why we played 3 spinners, 3 seamers, because kind of it's comfortable first game as captain. If it doesn't quite go right, you can go back to holding and end up with a seamer, which you're so used to doing on a flat wicket. So yeah, it's a really good point actually you make. And again, we're just talking about the adaptability, the change that you have to make. You talk about playing in India, batting in India, bowling in India, coping with the external stuff in India. There's a lot of things thrown at you in a small space of time. And that probably just sums up why the Indian challenge is so different and so tough. And then you say you go to... same love in Pakistan for cricket. Well, there is, but it's a very different thing. Same in Sri Lanka. There's still that love, but it's not the same. Whether it's just because there's so many people in India, there's so much bigger in those places. That's why all these kind of questions and challenges you have as a player seem to be magnified, and that's maybe one of the big differences of going there, and why going there, winning or doing well is actually it's a pretty good feather in your cap.
Well, it's a place where England have conceded 700 odd at Chennai, was it, when Karen Nair got a 100? So you've got to be prepared to be out in the field for upwards of 2 days.
Do you know about that game?
Tell us.
I dropped that bloke.
Oh no. On how many?
I mean, not that this might be a stat in Test cricket. I'm sure. I think it might be one of the most expensive drops in Test cricket, because he was on 30, and I know it's not the most, because someone dropped Gucci.
Kieran Moray dropped Gucci.
I'm going to say 30.
Yeah.
So he added 300. Karen Nair only added 270. In that game.
Someone else would have got the runs, Cookie. It was a flat deck.
Well, someone else might have got the runs, but he was their last recognised batsman at 6. And actually, do you know what I can say? Is because Graham Nicholls always used to sponsor one player of the opposition every time, and they never scored runs. And I thought, do you know what? This is brilliant. And he hadn't scored very many runs in that series, and I thought the Graham Nicholls thing has happened again. And then he went and gone and get 300. I mean, I did drop him on 270, and just to make matters worse, I was the bloke who misfielded who was on 299 to get 300 as well. It wasn't the reason why I then gave up the captaincy and never played again. No.
But that is part of the challenge, though, isn't it? I mean, when I think, looking at England, pink ball testing it at Ahmedabad, the ball's ragging Akshar Patel's bowling him out in 30 overs. And then he can play another test match, and you can be out there for 210 overs. So you've got to prepare yourself for the game going at breakneck speed, and for you actually sitting around there just trying to keep concentrating. I don't know how you do that.
Well, clearly I didn't, because it's all very good saying we should have done, but absolutely right. I mean, it's a test match in England most of the time. It's fairly not. I don't want to say fairly similar, but it is like. But you're right. You can have some real change of conditions from pitch to pitch in India.
So, lastly, everywhere in the world, India. Where do you put it on the relish scale? Can't wait to go out there and play. And where do you put it on the tough scale?
I think as an Englishman, Australia away as a tour is a tough place. I think I played 20 Test matches out there and lost, I'm going to say 15 of them. So I think that is a very, very hard. I think that's a harder place to play.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I just think this, whether it's the effect of the
whole country being
the
against
whole
you.
country going. The whole country in India aren't against you. They love you. They love you, and they love the enthusiasm. It's not quite the same with Australia. They're not. Then, as I say, it's just different. I think Australia ranks as the hardest place to go and win, but I think India offers you different challenges than what you've got to experience. And if you can conquer all those and deliver consistently over that, I think you become a player.